You can't suck and blow at the same time. We're talking about keeping our elbows up, buy Canadian, support Canadian. And then you have these draconian policies being implemented at all levels of government. Don't get me wrong. It's not just municipalities that aim to contradict any future investment in greenhouse in your municipalities.
Welcome to Greenhouse Success Stories. Tune in every week as we share conversations with growers, operators, and innovators from around the world, providing insight into what's working in their greenhouses. We discuss firsthand experiences and provide insights into how these farms are succeeding and thriving. Special thanks to our title sponsor, Arnois Greenhouse, with your host, founder of Little Greenhouse That Could, Trina Semenchuk.
Okay, thank you for being on this show, Richard. Today we have Richard Lee. He is the Executive Director of the Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers Association. So we'll be getting a lot of insight on the industry today instead of directly from the growers. So this shall be a really good addition to the podcast. So thank you for joining, Richard.
Thanks for having me, Trina.
So I did a bit of research, prior to this episode, and I saw you're with the Vegetable Growers Association for 18 years. And I just got curious because I saw before then you were an environmental consultant. So I was wondering if you could maybe explain a bit of your background on, where you were before the Vegetable Growers Association and how you got into the industry.
Absolutely. So just a point of clarification, it's 19 years. I'm going on 20. So I'm going to make sure I get every bit of my years of service as I can. So yeah, this is my 19th year. Next year, I'll be beginning my 20th. So my background has been, I was an entrepreneur originally before entering university and a little stint in law enforcement as well as automotive. During the downturn in automotive in the late 90s, I had an opportunity that I could engage in meeting some of the ISO 14001 requirements, which were aimed at environmental sustainability. I created a consulting business where I was able to help automotive manage some of their waste streams, whether it be cardboard, plastics, steel, aluminum. I was able to provide them opportunities to be compliant with the new compliance requirements. My secretary at the time was working for me and moved on to work with Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers. It was approximately 3, 4 years when she tendered her resignation that she reached out to me and asked me if I was looking for a job. At the time, OGVG was looking for a compliance officer, someone to create regulations and an enforcement program, which I applied and was successful with my application, ultimately leading to inheriting greater responsibility that included operational aspects of OGVG. And when the opportunity came up approximately 2.5 years ago, I was promoted to the executive director of the Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers.
Okay, that's a unique story.
Unconventional path, Trina.
It's very, very unconventional path. What got you interested in environmental and sustainability? Like I know you mentioned that ISO opportunity presented itself, but did you feel like you had a calling to do something sustainable?
I wouldn't say necessarily sustainable. That word sustainability means so much and different meanings to everyone, right? Especially over the last 5 years. I like to think that that was my entrepreneurial spirit shining through, and I saw an opportunity where I would be able to fix an issue that's created by all of automotive and provide solutions. It's kind of funny, right? Because my daughter's going through this right now and trying to identify a career path. She's gone to school for a specific discipline, and you start looking at what your future is going to look like. What do you want out of life? What do you want out that's going to be rewarding? And to me, it was something different every day. a challenge, continued learning, and continued education. So when I saw this opportunity, I quickly put together programs based on relationships that I had with plants across North America. And I was able to find solutions for them. And it worked well until there was another downturn in the automotive sector and ultimately led to where I am today.
Interesting. This is obviously the greenhouse podcast, so I'm going to start asking you questions about the Vegetable Growers Association. But just one more question on that, out of pure curiosity, like what were kind of those solutions that you were finding? Were you, sourcing other uses for the waste that they were creating and trying to create something like a circular economy, or how were you helping them meet
Good
compliance?
question. Yeah, waste diversion. So, a lot of the plastic products that we currently have a mixture of regrind as well as virgin material. At the time, I had collaborated with companies across Ontario, some in the Michigan area as well, where I would source product globally or through North America as well, bring those polymers into our processing plant here in Windsor. We would separate polymers based on density and type, and we would regrind the plastic. That regrind could be sold back to processors that can mix that regrind into injection of bumpers, maybe, or potentially body panels, cladding on vehicles. The composite deck boards that people are using. I know there's some commercial names, but they all used a polyethylene, a linear low density polyethylene that was sourced by milk jugs and milk jugs that had polypropylene caps. So you had to have the process to be able to separate those polymers and then reintroduce it into an end product. So I found solutions both locally in North America, and at the time there was a big market in the Asian markets that could take baled film, baled plastics, because their labor was so cheap. They could sort all the contamination and cross contamination of different polymers at a very low cost.
Do you see something similar being done in the greenhouse sector for the packaging that people are using? Because I know, if your plastics are labeled, like your clamshells, you can recycle them, but then they get mixed. And if you have mixed plastics coming down the same stream, then they've got their different melting temperatures, and it's hard to separate them. So I was wondering if if you've seen any initiatives happening like that with the greenhouse space.
Yeah, and that's a good question. We've testified before the Ag Senate Committee in Ottawa a couple times on the plastics movements, right? I'd like to think that agriculture, greenhouse specifically, has been very supportive of sustainability and sustainable packages. They have invested, when I say they, the growers, the marketers, have invested millions upon millions to make sure that they are reducing their reliance on plastic and seeking alternate sources, recognizing that the future of plastic is going to be limited, and we need to still protect and preserve the produce to ensure that it is in a form that is viable for long shipments. Like, we're talking shipments, we ship as far down south as Florida and as all along the eastern seaboard. So it's not like some of the policies created in the EU where they have relatively short travel times and their produce is not exposed to some of the elements that we experience. So when you think about sustainable packaging, what you see left in plastic is out of necessity. We've reduced everything else, and we are utilizing plastics where we have to as a last resort to preserve that the integrity and quality of that product. when you look at recycling solutions, it's important to ensure that we have a global solution, or at minimum, a North American solution to ensure that we remain competitive. That's the last thing we should be focusing on, is individual solutions based on municipalities or provinces that have no alignment across Canada that could put us at an unfair competitive advantage. So we need to harmonize that approach, ensure that the MRFs collecting these recyclables have the proper ability to sort them or collect them and have a central sorting solution, or look at a collaborative approach of service providers across North America that are able to take these plastics and have an end use for them.
Have you ever worked with a service provider in North America on this concept, or have seen people in the association working with service providers to develop, truly reusable, recyclable plastics of their clamshells?
Good question. So some of my contacts have identified the opportunity to capture greenhouse waste and have been in contact with me over the last, I'm going to say, year, in trying to identify solutions. And the problem comes back down to the federal, provincial, and municipal barriers that don't know how they can collect it. He's willing to take all of this, whether it be household plastics or consumer products. He's willing to take it all, and they have solutions for it. So when you look at our reducing our reliance on the EU as well as the Asian markets, we look at domestic sources. And when I say domestic, sure, it's Canada, but we're connected at the hip, Canada and US. And if they're able to source these materials locally and invest in the processing locally, we have solutions now in North America that could address some of these plastic nuisances that are created with one-time use plastics.
Okay, so this is my last question sort of on this topic, but that person that you mentioned, so would that look like he would, set up a service where he's collecting only plastics, so people get an only plastics bin at their household or, at their residential unit, and then he comes around with his own service to collect that?
You're thinking at the post-consumer level, right? And the
Yeah.
problem with any type of plastics or plastics recycling, you need the volumes. You need the
Yeah.
volumes to
Yeah.
make it economically viable. So he's willing, his name's Gerald, actually. Gerald's willing to put together a program, but we need the support of the province. We need the support of the municipalities to be aligned. We need the resources to ensure that it's collected properly. That has been the impediment at the roadside collection. And you're talking about a circular economy. How do you gather those plastics if you can't even train your constituents or residents in your municipality to sort it?
Yeah.
It's an ongoing challenge. Starts from the ground up, and there solutions, absolutely, but we need help from the province and municipalities to invest into a robust collection system so that they're able to reuse and recycle as opposed to landfilling this waste.
Yeah, right. So is that one of the roles of the Ontario Vegetable Greenhouse Growers Association, is to look for ways to collaborate with municipalities and governments to help get services in place to help greenhouse growers succeed?
Absolutely. So it's Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers, and one of our mandates is advocacy. Best representing our sector to be able to identify solutions and enable our members to be successful. So, you look at waste diversion. It doesn't have to be sustainability and packaging. It could be disposal of vines that
Yeah.
may have cross-contamination in, the string that's used to lead the vines up while they're growing. It could be in the culls, right? That we're currently taking off the plant to ensure that healthy fruit is growing on the vine. The challenge comes is that tipping costs at local landfills is continuing to rise. And when you look at the sheer volume of the greenhouse waste that's created, it's only a matter of time that they close those doors to us. We need to look at waste diversion alternatives. We need to ensure that, land application is one option. The problem is when you start dealing with disease and pests, what is the potential of those diseases and pests expanding to field farming or harboring a very mild winter and reintroducing themselves into greenhouse and impacting our production base? So we want to be responsible. We want to be sustainable. We want to be environmentally conscious. We just, at the end of the day, it also comes at a cost, and a cost not only financially, but managing our current greenhouse operations.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of different moving parts that you have to consider when assessing the viability of these options. So, just on this topic, I'm wondering if you could tell me a bit about a story of one time where the Ontario Vegetable Greenhouse Growers Association advocated and worked with the municipality, the governments to set up a successful program that helped empowered growers.
Yeah, so there's a couple things, right? Like Bill C-280 was payment protection. It was a perfect example of where greenhouse is probably one of the only commodities that don't have production insurance to ensure that growers are paid in the event of bankruptcy or insolvency. We had a large marketer that claimed bankruptcy approximately 4 years ago that resulted in catastrophic losses that most small farms would not be able to sustain. We export about 85% of our produce to the US. They have what's called PACA Trust, which essentially ensures those selling produce into the US are paid for the produce that they grow. It's a fundamental philosophy to ensure that you're paid for the product that you farm and grow, right? Well, PACA decided to rescind the reciprocity offered to Canadian shippers because Canada didn't have a similar program. So now our shippers were not protected. We had introduced a Bill C-280, and when I say we, one of the MPs from the Holland Marsh area, Scott Davidson, was the champion on this bill. And we went through a litany of testimony leading up to the election. And in the 11th hour, the bill was passed. That was a monumental win that has been going on for so the years. So there's always a disparity in the years. Some of my elders that are in the sector say it's 35. Some are saying it's 40 years. The best I can ascertain is over 35 years. We've been working on payment protection to protect fresh fruit and vegetable growers to ensure they're paid. And that legislation was passed prior to the election. Now, based on the trade challenges we're facing right now, doesn't look like anything has moved forward as far as enacting that payment protection program, much less getting the reciprocity reinstated by PACA. That was a perfect example. Years and years of consistent messaging to protect our farmers, to ensure they're paid, finally came to fruition after all these years.
Wow.
Another example would be carbon tax. I know it may not have been just our advocacy or our lobbying efforts, but in 2024, I think we were paying approximately $24 million in carbon taxes. And if it were to continue, not be paused, we would be paying over $30 million this year for carbon tax alone. So, I like to think that our advocacy, our continued messaging and collaboration with government had some input in having those carbon taxes paused, especially to support growing food, right? especially to support that, recognizing we don't have alternate fuel sources to heat greenhouses. And we need that recognized by the government. We need to also ensure that they understand that we're recapturing CO2 being emitted from our boilers.
Mm-hmm.
And we're reintroducing that to greenhouses. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no reward for being directionally correct. Instead, we're penalized. And again, and that's with a significant discount too. That's it, like over, I think it was 80 or 85%. The exact figures escape me right now, Trina, but that was with an exemption of 85%. Could you imagine? Could be even as
Wow.
high as 90. Could you imagine what our members would be paying if we didn't have that exemption? You would not have agriculture in Canada if that carbon tax was not exempted or paused currently.
Right. And also like the price of produce for the end consumer for, wanting to buy local would likely be, a lot higher than what would be. Thank goodness that you got it
Yeah, you're talking
removed.
about the affordability crisis, which is probably an hour on its own, right? Because you look at the cost of labor, the cost of energy to run a greenhouse, those are our two largest input costs.
Yeah.
If we didn't have that temporary foreign worker program, which is another program we continue to advocate for, we wouldn't have agriculture in Ontario. We would not be able to have domestic workforce working in a greenhouse, harvesting crop and doing a crop. It's unfortunate, but greenhouse isn't sexy. Farming isn't sexy. And we've seen a significant increase in the unemployment rate as it relates to domestic workforce supporting agriculture. And we rely heavily on that program. That's one thing the government has gotten right, is creating this temporary foreign worker program. The challenge we face now is ongoing changes to the program that could have detrimental impacts on our members and farms.
So when it comes to, your advocacy work, what would you say is the biggest challenge to, pushing the needs of the members of your association forward? Like, is it communicating with government, or is it, even getting time to speak with them, or is it, coordinating between all members to identify key issues? Like, what would you say?
Yeah. So we have a board of directors that represent our members, and they provide guidance to staff on what deliverables they're looking for us to execute. I mean, when you look at it, we're a provincial organization. We're a significant provincial organization with farm gate value at in excess of $1.8 billion.
Yeah,
And we
it's a
also
lot.
collaborate with national organizations, right? So we have Fruit and Vegetable Growers of Canada, Canadian Produce Marketing Association, we have Canadian Federation of Agriculture, and those alliances allow us to get the audience which we before federal government. Because we export so much, Trina, obviously trade and market access is one of our key priorities. Ensuring their
Yeah.
borders are open and that we have a strategy that protects our production base in North America, policies that are friendly to agriculture and conducive to investment, business risk management programs. That seems to be the latest buzzword at provincial and federal level, and modernizing those programs. And
Mhm.
ultimately, infrastructure. And infrastructure, it all flows down from the federal level, right? Federal level provides funding to provinces, provinces fund municipalities, and we need to make sure that agriculture is carved out there as well.
Okay, so you've mentioned trade a little bit, so I want to spend some time talking about trade and the introduction of these tariffs. What has been, your experience and role in negotiating or playing a part of seeing how we can manage trade with greenhouse growers in Ontario given these tariffs? And
Yeah.
what do you think? How do you think this is going to impact greenhouse growers in Ontario and in Canada? If you could talk a bit about that.
So let's just clarify something. tariffs are not in place currently, are they, Gina? Because if you know something, I don't know. We just have a threat of tariffs at this time,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
the
Good correction. I
letter
should have
that
said that.
President Trump issued is in fact just that, a letter, right? It's a letter indicating that there could be broad tariffs applied as of this Friday against all commodities entering the U.S. So if you recall back in January, President Trump was being inaugurated, right? And there were some significant threats and reservations of what he could and potentially could do over those next couple of months. He created some significant reservations that dictated pausing of investments, growth, and seizing opportunities for our members. As we've indicated we export 1.6 billion of our product to the US, 85% of our production. We feed Canada first, but the US is our market. Canada is a tenth of the US population. So we monitored these threats and we took them seriously from January.
Yeah.
In March, if you recall, and I've been quoted as on this before, it felt like I woke up from a bad nightmare. And that nightmare became reality. Because when I woke up on that Thursday morning, was it Wednesday morning or Thursday morning? Regardless, tariffs were in place of 25% against all commodities entering the US. How do you stop shipment of a perishable product that's been picked, packed, and on a truck? In those 3 days that our members continued shipments to the US, we paid $7 million in tariffs.
Wow.
That's in 3 days. And
wow.
No opportunity or chance of recovering that cost of doing business. In preparation for those tariffs.
Just a quick question. So $7 million amongst how many growers or businesses? And I know, you've got a few that they oversee a couple of different ones, but just in general.
So we have growers, we have packers and marketers. Growers can only grow, packers can only pack, and marketers can only sell produce.
Yeah.
So we have 170 growers and marketers. We're approximately 32 marketers. So those marketers are representing growers' produce and are shipping to the US. So those marketers have been in discussions with their retail and consumers to say, listen, these tariffs are not something we can absorb. There is no margins, definitely not 25% margins in the supply chain that can absorb these costs. So in most instances, retailers were willing to take on some, if not all, of those tariffs. The problem was because they came in so quickly, purchase orders were already issued that week. So retailers were indicating, hey, listen, happy to amend our purchase order for the following week, but this week it stands as it is, right? So the challenge was that once the tariffs were called off, they rescinded those purchase orders with increased tariff amounts, and we got stuck with a $7 million bill. There was 1.8 billion in export activity, not 1.6, 1.8 billion.
So then who ended up paying that 7 million? Was it divided amongst like those 202 businesses in total? How did that work?
Ultimately, the grower is the one left holding the bag, right? Because it's their product.
Yeah.
The marketer is just the agent of sale, and their returns would have been depressed for that week. By the time they accounted for that sale, they would have suffered some significant losses this year.
I mean, we were talking about $100,000 for these growers. That's a huge cost out of nowhere.
And you were asking about the volume and what goes over the border. We produce over 510 million kilograms of produce in 1 year. To put that into context, that's about 300 trailer truckloads leaving farms daily to service consumers. two-thirds of those trucks are headed south of the border. So if you put that into context, those 3 days, we had 600 trucks crossing the border that were subjected to those tariffs of $7 million.
Yeah, I like it when you break it down based on trucks for the visual learner. It's like easier to, comprehend how much produce that really is. So, moving forward, as your role in the association, what would you say the biggest challenge today is for supporting the greenhouse growers and the marketers and the whole industry in Ontario? What would you say that is?
I like to break everything into priorities, right? Top 3 priorities: trade access, policies, and I would put business risk management programs in those policies, because without friendly policies, you're closing the door to investment and growth in Canada. And lastly, infrastructure, because without the infrastructure, you're not able to grow. You're not able to remain competitive. You're making capital investments to ensure that you remain viable. That comes at a cost.
And can you talk a bit about the infrastructure restrictions that are being placed now on growers who want to expand or new growers who want to get into the market in terms of getting access to energy and water?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had some challenges with hydro, natural gas, as well as water and wastewater, right? And I'll start west and work my way east, recognizing that we represent Ontario. Southwestern Ontario, 80% of the acreage is located in the Kingsville, Leamington area. So that gives you a sense of the number of acreage and investment dollars that have been made in the sector. We have municipalities. We want to remain competitive, so we have year-round production now, right? And the only way we can remain competitive with year-round production is the use of supplemental lighting. So that supplemental lighting comes with some perceived irritants because of the close proximity of our farms located in the Kingsville, Leamington area.
Yeah.
We've worked with communities and identified plans to install curtains that would mitigate the light being emitted. We have municipalities that are looking at 100% light abate. So when you think about that, no light can emit from any greenhouse structure. How do you accomplish that? Even in a residential home, how do you stop every little bit of light emitting from your farm? We have another municipality that is implementing a boarding, rooming, lodging, housing bylaw that requires every owner of a long-term rental greater than, I think it's 21 days, subject themselves to another registry, unannounced inspections that are redundant to existing inspections that are taking place, and subjecting themselves to a criminal background check. So now you have a municipality determining licensing provisions based on criminality that is enforced by federal legislation. We have another one where we have farms, about 16 farms that paid for a sewer infrastructure, over $200,000 each person. And due to the flooding that occurred in 2023, they're quick to blame Greenhouse for the excessive discharges that we've made into the sewer system that we paid for. And they're choosing to support residential development over agriculture, and now looking to tax Greenhouse to pay for infrastructure costs that they don't have the revenue to support. These guys are connected to a sewer system, domestic waste and greenhouse nutrient feed water, which we call GNF. And now they're bringing them back to the table and saying, well, now you can only discharge X amount and only during these times of the day, but little to no considerations for what do you do with the excess. Now you have to install additional tanks. You have to monitor your quality of water. You have to restrict when you flush the toilets and when you discharge into the system at certain times of the day. When you have infrastructure where studies show that they failed to maintain, there's groundwater infiltration, And it wasn't running at capacity at the time of the torrential downpours that Essex County experienced. It's just ridiculous when you look at it. They're looking to target agriculture because we have a 25% exemption on property taxes to support agriculture. So now you have a municipality that you have farms that have been established there since, I'm going to go back to the 50s, late 50s, early 60s. And you have a council that is looking to deter future investment and migrant workers in their community because they don't get the tax base without recognition of, the pack houses that pay full industrial rate, the marketing companies that are huge corporations in their community, the jobs and spin-off jobs that are created in the community. Instead, they're looking to tax greenhouse so that they can offset their budget and be able to invest in infrastructure. Question is will they actually invest in infrastructure for greenhouse, or will they just continue to apply bylaws and development charges that would hinder that investment going in their community?
It seems to me that there's a bit of a gap between the municipality and the greenhouse growers and operators. The municipalities clearly maybe not seeing a benefit from having these greenhouses here, just from listening to the way that you're explaining it. So I'm wondering, is there more consultation that needs to happen between municipalities and greenhouse growers and operators within those jurisdictions? What if somebody, wants to start up a greenhouse brand new in a municipality? Is maybe something that they should do is start working with the municipality and seeing if they could have something to offer with their greenhouse that might, boost the municipalities like services. Or I'm just spitballing ideas here, but it would
Gina,
be
novel concept, establishing a task force, or I would like to resurrect a agricultural committee that represents Southwestern Ontario that's inclusive of Chatham, Kent. The consultations on this sewer system was done in a manner that supported that they were checking boxes. It was done in a manner that they had already predetermined the outcome because they ordered the meters in advance of the passing of the bylaw that would be specifically installed on greenhouses only to determine what they're discharging and when they're discharging and volumes. So when you look at that and there is no engagement prior to seeking input, and you look at post passing of the bylaw, it indicates that they created a task force after the fact that excluded OGVG, that represents all growers across Ontario. They've now started meeting with individual growers seeking input, and it's almost like they put the cart before the horse. It made no sense at all. Now they're trying to figure out how they work around this now. In another municipality, we have no sewers and no water, but a farm punches a hole for a well and puts in their own wastewater treatment center on site. They're still subjected to paying the development charges of connecting to infrastructure that's not available to them. It exceed, we're talking $300,000-$400,000 cost to connect when they can't connect.
Yeah.
We have another municipality with development charges, $177,000 per acre for the first year for water, wastewater. That will go to $377,000 by year 5. How do you put up an acre of greenhouse at those costs? That's before a shovel hits the ground. That's before permitting. That's before approvals. It's just archaic. And then we have a municipality going east further that is looking to implement stormwater taxes for greenhouses, impermeable surfaces, so that they can support their infrastructure needs. There's no sewers where these greenhouses are located, but yet they're forced to pay this stormwater tax. So, and the scary part about this, Trina, and we laugh about this because you can't make this up, right? And the challenge becomes, you continue to create these bylaws and these development charges when they meet for their municipalities meetings. There's 444 municipalities in Ontario. They meet at Roma and AMO, and they share these ideas. So if we don't push back and we don't challenge them, we threaten the future viability of agriculture in Ontario and in the municipalities we currently reside in. This sewer bylaw that they've implemented will cost my members in excess of $100,000 to $150,000 annually. They're subjected to paying additional connection charges, which they would have paid when they originally connected, pay for these meters, which they can't tell us how much they are, pay for the installation, which they can't tell us what it is because it's so complicated, and pay for the monitoring. They have a provision in that bylaw that states any costs associated to implementing this bylaw will be borne on Greenhouse.
Are you seeing the same trend happening in other provinces?
No, they actually, so part of our national organizations, they look at me and just shake their heads and like, are you making this up? Like, it's comical, right? Because again, we've had significant growth, over 5% annually over the last 10 years on average. So when you deal with that type of growth, you're going to have growing pains. Problem is we're a willing partner. We remain a willing partner. We want to find solutions. We'll walk into provincial government with you hand in hand, looking for solutions. But when you take draconian approaches like this, all it does is tells me and tells our members, we don't want Greenhouse in our sector. We don't care about domestic food security or sovereignty. We just want revenue to support growing, building homes quicker, and bringing in that tax base that will help make that community more prosperous. And it's deplorable to think that.
And is the same trend happening with traditional agriculture?
Well, that's a funny part, right?
Mhm.
Agriculture is agriculture as far as I'm concerned. We're growing food. Only difference is we're doing it a lot more effectively based on yield and a smaller footprint. Are we using natural resources? Absolutely. We're maximizing inputs, minimizing outputs. We recover what we put in to the best of our ability to lessen that impact on the environment. They don't care. They just see it as drawing that resources that they could divert to taxpayers are paying the full wage of or not wage, but the full complement of the property taxes they're looking for.
Knowing all of this, if there's a new grower who wants to get into this space or someone new who wants to start up a greenhouse, what advice would you give them? Would it be to consult with the municipalities, immediately right from the start, or what would that be?
Absolutely, due diligence, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of funny that you brought that question up because I was approached about a year and a half ago by um, a third party looking to establish greenhouses in Ontario and
Mhm.
tried to guide them through all the challenges, the infrastructure, et cetera, right? And that was a year and a half ago. Just last month, I get a call saying that it's a no-go. The cost associated to getting infrastructure to that site just totally destroyed the project, right? And then you look at competing jurisdictions. We've lost about 500 acres to Ohio and Michigan area. Ohio and Michigan are saying, how much energy do you need? How much natural gas? How much electricity do you need? You need water? How much? You need sewers? How
Yeah.
much? They're opening doors. They're welcoming that investment. And they're
Yeah.
ensuring that they stay there with tax concessions. And they're willing to attract business, create friendly policies that support agriculture, that support businesses remaining in Canada. I use this terminology a lot and I get some weird looks on it, but you can't suck and blow at the same time. We're talking about keeping our elbows up, buy Canadian, support Canadian, And then you have these draconian policies being implemented at all levels of government. Don't get me wrong. It's not just municipalities that aim to contradict any future investment in greenhouse in your municipalities. And by the time they realize that it was an oversight, will it be too late? Will that investment have gone elsewhere, whether it be competing jurisdictions outside this province in climates like Quebec, British Columbia, Alberta? Those are some other areas that are heavily vested in greenhouse vegetable production.
I don't have a good solution for.
Listen, again,
I
the
wish I
key
did.
point is we can find solutions, right?
Yes.
And they're looking at declassifying greenhouse as agriculture so that we don't have that 25% exemption on property tax. Could you imagine that? You're declassing agriculture that we feed people, support the economy, contribute to the economy, all the people that work in greenhouse, over 35,000 jobs through the full value chain is what is attributed to Ontario greenhouse vegetable growers.
Mm-hmm. Richard, do you meet with like the mayors of these municipalities or?
I did until they passed the bylaw. Listen, I like to take a pragmatic approach to all these situations. We had some relationship rebuilding that had to occur when I took on this job. I met with these mayors on a regular basis to discuss growth plans so that they understood what the projections were. We identified potential new nuisances that they are facing and how we could collaborate to help. We opened up our greenhouses to tours to the general public to give them an understanding of what we're trying to do here. It's not just a big conglomeration of metal and plastic or glass and concrete. We protect the ground. That ground, once we lift that greenhouse off that ground, that's still protected land. And we need organizations like Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, the national organizations to recognize that greenhouse is agriculture. End of story. And we need to support one another because once it pivots from greenhouse, field farming, conventional farming will also be a target if they're looking to recover costs.
So what has been successful? I know there's tons of challenges. They passed this bill. Sounds like a lot of frustrations with, wanting and needing to support growers to expand and new growers. And, obviously there's now all these limitations and restrictions on them, which is frustrating. But have you had, successful consultations or engagements with any municipalities, and what has that success resulted in or looks like?
Absolutely. So one of our largest communities is the Leamington area where our office is located. That's where the largest volume of growers are located. When I came aboard, one of my main objectives was rebuilding relationships due to past transgressions. The current mayor is also the warden of Essex County. So she represents all the mayors in Essex County. Hilda McDonald has made some very, very supportive comments in some of her public addresses, recognizing that greenhouse is part of Leamington and that we need greenhouse as well as retail, industrial, commercial, restaurants, etc. So for her to recognize greenhouse and support greenhouse and look for options to help address some of our concerns like infrastructure, I think that was a positive turn of events. And I use that as a case study for any discussions I have with other mayors of these other communities, saying that we are where we were with Leamington 5 years ago. And if we can fast track it, because it's not like you're going to take out the hundreds and thousands of acres in your community because you don't want to support agriculture, greenhouse agriculture. If we can learn from what we went through with Leamington, we'll save a lot of headache, time, trouble, and money, and we can work together in a concerted effort. That's all we're asking for.
So how did you get to that point with the mayor? How did you rebuild that relationship?
It takes two willing parties. We're both reticent. She tested me out. She contacted some colleagues. I did the same. Hey, listen, it's business, right? We're not going to agree on everything, but
Yeah.
what we can agree on, we'll work together on. We sat on, different committees together. We had different discussions. Like I said, we have almost a monthly meeting where we catch up and ensure. And of course, it doesn't just focus on business. It focuses on the rumor mill, right? And what's going on in the community, as well as their vacations. And, so it's developing that rapport to ensure that they can have a trusting, willing partner that's willing to best represent Greenhouse while recognizing the municipality's concerns as well. Is the mayor the one that makes the final decisions? No, but she's going to be the strongest voice to speak on behalf of our association and our members to support Greenhouse. And then, you're going to have subsequent meeting with the CAOs and councils, individual council members. That community that I call that passed the bylaw, the municipality that passed the bylaw, only 3 of their councilors returned my call. I wanted to speak to them before the deputation and passing of the bylaw. 4 of them chose not to return my call. They don't believe OGBG has a seat at the table. And that's probably the first oversight in trying to resolve conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just on a positive note about Leamington, as someone who has always wanted to be in the greenhouse space and, dreamed about how can I design greenhouses and get greenhouses everywhere here in Winnipeg, knowing that there were really none in the city. It's like, if you really want to learn about greenhouses, everyone says, you have to go to Amsterdam. But really, you can go to Leamington because of how many greenhouses are there now and how many equipment providers and service providers. It's really a hub for greenhouse design and construction. So one of the huge benefits of promoting this industry is attracting talent to the sector. And so I think that that's something that should also be communicated with other municipalities, because I'm not, I drove to Leamington, and no offense to Leamington, but when I got there, I was like, oh, okay, it's, a small town, but at least they have greenhouses everywhere.
You know what? It's actually shocking, right? When people actually understand the scope of agriculture, greenhouse agriculture in this area, it's mind-boggling, right? They come down off of 77, off the 401, the main corridor in, you see all these high-tech greenhouses that are generations of work, right? And I get the point that the community should be, able to see the inside of these greenhouses and better understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. But let me ask you this. I came from a background in automotive. I don't know how many years I've wondered what these plants were doing. Like, I couldn't go in and visit them. I couldn't go and tour the farm or the factories and see what's going on. Greenhouses open their arms, willing to provide these tours. And you have counselors turning their nose up during the discussion. And you also have the potential of spread of disease based on, closed, controlled environment agriculture that could spread rapidly. So we have to be very cognizant in how we approach it as well. Are we hiding it? Absolutely not. But we do have to observe biosecurity measures and ensure that any tours are conducted in a controlled environment. And I will not subject my members to any of that risk if it's simply to appease the community or the citizens of that municipality. I was happy to provide educational briefs, seminars. We're even investigating opportunities of a traveling greenhouse that we can put at fairs.
Yeah,
and
that's a
show,
great idea.
right? But again,
That's
it
a
comes
great
at
idea.
cost, comes at resources, it comes at
Yeah.
liability, it comes at where do you manage, who manages it? And it is the technical experts that should be there. So it's just ongoing. Then you go virtual and you're just not getting the scope of greenhouse agriculture in Ontario, much less Canada.
Just to end this off here, I want to ask you one last question. Despite all these challenges, what keeps you in the greenhouse sector, and what is your proudest moment as your involvement with your current association?
Wow, my proudest moment. I don't know. I really, yeah, you know what? It's difficult. My mentor retired last year, and he said it was never for himself. It was always for the growers. It was always for our members, and I'm almost of that same mindset. In a lot of cases, it is a thankless job, right? If you're doing this for a pat on the back or for someone to say, "Hey, attaboy," I'm sorry, you're in the wrong sector. I really like the challenge. I really like the challenge that is different daily. I like the opportunity to implement my input, and it's oftentimes collaborated with our board or individual members or staff to ensure that we find the best solution to represent our members. I think, to have that ability to see and experience things that most people would never be able to experience. How many people have met with the prime minister or the ministers of agriculture, different ministers across the country, right? Or at the provincial level, and be able to impact and provide feedback that influences policy, that influences decisions that ultimately impact agriculture moving forward.
Yeah.
So I don't have one defining moment. I'll tell you this, that it's definitely been a roller coaster ride, from my previous role to my current role. And I'll tell you that I continue to learn. And these members, I tell you, once you get, gain that respect and trust, you learn so much about this sector that you would never read about unless you experience on farm or they shared it with you. And to me, that's impressive, right? To see a multi-billion-dollar sector created in the hamlet of southwestern Ontario and expand to the rest of Ontario tells you that, you know what? Controlled environment agriculture, greenhouse is the future of agriculture, and is where we need to continue to put our resources and recognize that the future is going to be bright, but we need to be proactive, not reactive. We keep playing this game of whack-a-mole, right? Something pops up, we whack it. We're just chasing issues. We need to be proactive. We know what the growth trajectory is. We know what we need to do to support that trajectory. The question now becomes, do you want to support it? And that's at the municipal level, provincial level, and the federal level.
Well, thank you for all of your insight. Thank you for your time. You have a very important job that you're doing to grow the sector. So thank you for all of your work and all that you contribute to helping greenhouse growers.
Appreciate it, Trina. I appreciate your zest for this sector and what you're trying to accomplish in Manitoba as well. And anything we can do to support you, we're happy to do that.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Greenhouse Success Stories hosted by Trina Semenchuk. Thanks to our guests who make this all possible. Special thanks to our title sponsor, Arnois Greenhouse. To read the full show notes for each episode, which includes an episode summary, key takeaways, and guest resources mentioned, please visit greenhousesuccess.com.